So we started off by rolling out some of this paper to make a pattern for the Ballista because the thickness that we needed to support the band was much thicker than we had anticipated. What we did is made this pattern here and stuck it on the wood. These, I don't remember what kind of wood they are. We just cut it out 3 times, stacked it together, and screwed it together to create the thickness we needed to support the power of the band.
Growing up, said we'd be young forever. You taught me how to love, and nothing could be better than you and me, baby, it was you and me. We can never fall, and nobody could break us, yeah, I thought we had it all. Take me back to when it was you and me, baby, it was you and me.
So here we are just using the jigsaw to cut all these out. We started with the wrong blade, so it took quite a while. But my dad helped me switched it out, and then we went cruising with the new blade.
Said we'd be young forever. You taught me how to love, and nothing could be better than you and me, baby, it was you and me.
So we cut the main barrel piece out of this 2x6, and that is what the bolt rests on while the band propels it forward, and we used 2x3s that we milled down on the table saw, so they're just in half, to be the guide rails. So we just used little 2x3 blocks to raise those up so the band could slide into that slot and propel forward the bolt properly without any lift or any of that. So we just screwed down those longer guide rails for the band onto those small resting blocks to raise it up to the correct height. Pretty straightforward. We split 2 of them, and so we had to recut them because they are fairly small. But I would recommend drilling pilot holes before you put screws into those boards. We cut 2 notches out of the center of the bow arms for the bolt to slide through, and then took it to the belt sander and started shaping, which took quite a while and made our arms quite sore because that piece of wood is really heavy. We went through 3 of those sanding, 3 of those belts for the sander. We didn't record the whole sanding process, but there was a lot to be done. There was probably a better way to do it, but we didn't have a better way to do it, so this is how we did it. And then we started on the mount. We just cut down our 2x3s, found the shape we wanted, and then set it up and cut it to the way we thought was the best. Keeping in mind that triangles are technically the strongest shape, so we use that to our advantage to use the least amount of wood possible while creating the most stable base, because the Ballista part itself is quite heavy. If you do this, I do recommend having somebody to help you because it is quite difficult and it took us a very long time. We're not done yet, and we've spent 5+ hours working. We just used some countersink screws to make sure that this sat where we needed it to. Held it in place pretty good with these clamps. Drove those screws down because we don't want them to tear up the foam heads of the bolts, and they will be easier to hide using stain later. Are just little U-clip things. They slide together. We took off the bolt part and the clip part and just hammered it in, and the threads on that U held it in place and clamped the bolt in place. But here is our Ballista. We will have a part 2 coming out in the next couple weeks, so make sure you click that subscribe button so you make sure you see that video, and hit the bell icon so you can be one of the first people to see it. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next week.